Hey guys, tonight we will listen to a calm and gentle story that will help you relax and drift into a deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, make your bed comfortable, dim the lights, and allow your body to fully relax. Close your eyes, take slow, deep breaths. With every breath, feel your body getting lighter, softer, calmer. Let your thoughts melt away like snow under the morning sun. Now let's begin. It started with a dream so soft, so quiet, that at first I thought it was nothing more than my imagination. Every night for a week, I found myself standing on a narrow mountain path. The wind cold, yet gentle, carrying the sound of distant prayer bells. I could see faded flags fluttering in a mist, red, yellow, and white. And somewhere ahead, hidden behind the fog, I heard a voice whisper, "Return to the mountain." When I woke up, the voice still echoed in my ears. I didn't understand it. I lived in New York, surrounded by noise, neon lights, and restless nights. Mountains felt like another world. And yet, that whisper followed me through every waking moment. On the third night, I heard it again, clearer this time. The same soft voice, almost like a prayer carried by the wind. The village awaits. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just a dream. But soon, every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same image. A small wooden bridge leading into white fog, and the sound of bells fading into silence. One evening, unable to resist, I opened my laptop and searched. Tibetan mountain village with prayer flags and fog. Thousands of images appeared, but none matched what I saw. Except one, a photograph so old and faint, it looked like it was taken a century ago. It showed a wooden bridge, half covered in snow, leading to what looked like an empty village in the clouds. Underneath it, the caption read, "The hidden village of Nyima, said to appear only in dreams." My heart skipped a beat. Could it be the same place? Was my mind somehow remembering something I'd never seen? That night, I packed a small bag, camera, notebook, passport, and booked a flight to Tibet. I didn't know what I was chasing. Maybe peace, maybe meaning, or maybe just a voice in my dreams. As my plane soared over the snow-covered Himalayas, I looked out the window and saw endless peaks stretching into the horizon. Each one looked like it was guarding a secret, silent, ancient, and alive. And for the first time in years, I felt calm, almost as if the mountains themselves were calling me home. The flight landed in Lhasa just as the sun touched the golden edges of the mountains. The air felt thin, but it was the purest air I had ever breathed. It carried something ancient, a quiet hum, like the earth itself was softly chanting. Outside the airport, the world moved slower. The taxi drivers smiled with gentle patience, and prayer wheels spun endlessly at every doorway, sending tiny, invisible prayers into the wind. I didn't have a plan, only a feeling, a pull deep inside, guiding me north toward the mountains. So I hired a small Jeep, an old machine that coughed more smoke than it should have, and began my journey into the unknown. The road twisted like a ribbon between cliffs and clouds. Every turn revealed a new landscape. Icy rivers glowing blue under the fading sun. Villages built of stone and wood. Children running with laughter echoing through the valley. As night approached, I stopped at a small guest house run by an elderly couple. The woman served butter tea and barley bread, and when I mentioned a hidden village, she froze. Her smile faded. The air in the room grew heavier. She whispered something in Tibetan to her husband, and he shook his head slowly, as if warning her not to speak further. After a long pause, she looked back at me and said softly, "There are many villages in the mountains. Some are not meant to be found. Her words sent a chill down my spine. I wanted to ask more, but she changed the subject, talking instead about the snow forecast for the next morning. That night, as I lay on the wooden bed, the sound of wind outside began to change. It no longer howled like a storm. It sang, a low, humming melody, the same tone I had heard in my dreams. And then, from somewhere beyond the walls, I heard the whisper again, return to the mountain. My eyes opened instantly. The sound wasn't in my head. It came from outside. I stepped out into the freezing night, barefoot, my breath turning into fog. The moon was full, painting the mountains in silver light. And far away, high up on a ridge, I saw a faint glow. Not fire, not light, something softer like the shimmer of moving clouds. I stood there for minutes, frozen in awe. It was calling me, not through words this time, but through a feeling, a deep, quiet pull on my chest. The next morning, I told the old couple I wanted to go higher into the mountains. The woman looked at me with sadness in her eyes. The road ends soon, she said. Beyond that, only pilgrims and spirits go. Still, she packed me some food and tied a red cloth around my wrist. For protection, she murmured. The mountain listens to the brave, but it tests them first. The jeep could go no further after a few miles. The path ahead was narrow, rocky, and wrapped in mist. So I began to walk. Every step felt heavier, yet my heart grew lighter. The wind was cold, but carried a strange warmth inside it. A voice that seemed to breathe through the air itself. At first, I thought it was just the wind whistling through rocks. But slowly, the sound began to form words. Faint, gentle, almost human. You were close. I stopped, my heart racing. No one was around. Just the empty valley, the endless white peaks, and the whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let the sound wash over me like a wave. The wind carried the scent of pine, snow, and incense. I felt peace, but also a strange ache, like I was remembering something long forgotten. When I opened my eyes again, the fog had thickened. The path ahead was gone, but through the mist, I could see faint outlines, prayer flags fluttering gently, and the shadow of what looked like a wooden bridge. The same bridge from my dreams. My breath caught. Every sound faded, even the whisper. Only the steady beat of my heart remained. I took one step forward, and then another. The air grew warmer. The mist began to glow, like sunlight behind a curtain. And somewhere within that light, a voice whispered again, clearer this time. The morning mist was heavy, almost sacred. Each breath felt like inhaling clouds. I stood before the faint shape of the wooden bridge, the same one from my dreams. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I was awake or still dreaming. The world around me had grown silent. No birds, no sound of the wind, just a stillness so pure it felt alive. I took another step forward, and the wooden planks creaked softly beneath my feet. The bridge stretched into a fog so thick I couldn't see where it ended. But something deep inside urged me on, a quiet whisper that seemed to come from my own heartbeat. Halfway across, the air began to shimmer. Tiny golden particles floated in the mist, like sunlight trapped in invisible threads. I felt no fear, only peace, the kind that makes you forget who you were and remember something much older, much deeper. When I reached the other side, I found a narrow trail climbing upward. Rocks, moss, and ancient prayer stones lined the path. Each stone had Tibetan mantras carved into it, words of compassion, love, and letting go. I ran my fingers across one. The letters were smooth, as if touched by countless hands over centuries. The moment my skin met the cold stone, a faint vibration traveled up my arm, a pulse gentle but real. The path twisted higher into the clouds. The world below disappeared completely. All that existed now was white mist and the steady rhythm of my footsteps. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had begun to lose meaning. Then, from behind a curtain of fog, a figure appeared. An old monk stood beside the trail. He wore a red robe faded by sun and time, and his eyes were closed, as if he could see without seeing. When he spoke, his voice was calm and low, like water flowing through a cave. "You've come a long way," he said, "but you do not belong here yet." I felt a chill, but not from the cold. "How do you know who I am?" I asked. The monk smiled. "Those who hear the mountains always find this path, but few are ready to understand what they seek." I tried to explain the dream, the voice, the village, the whisper that called me. He listened without interruption, eyes still closed. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "The village you seek," he said, "does not exist for everyone. It reveals itself only to the lost, to those whose hearts carry silence louder than sound." His words sank into me like snow melting into earth. Before I could ask what he meant, he turned and started walking deeper into the fog. "Come," he said. "The mountain wants to see you." We walked for what felt like hours, our footsteps muffled by the thick blanket of mist. Sometimes I thought I saw shapes moving in the white haze. A doorway, a bell, a shadow. But every time I blinked, they were gone. Finally, the fog began to thin. Ahead, sunlight poured through like liquid gold, and I could hear a faint humming. Not human, not wind, but something in between. The monk stopped and pointed ahead. "The path ends here," he said softly. "From this point, you must walk alone." I looked beyond him. A steep stone trail led down into a hidden valley, and far below, through the last veil of mist, I saw rooftops glimmering faintly. Small houses made of wood and clay, surrounded by prayer flags that danced in invisible air. It was the same village from my dreams. The same color of the roofs, the same slow movement of the flags. Everything, but even from a distance, I could feel something else. A pulse, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. When I turned back to thank the monk, he was gone. The fog swallowed him completely, leaving behind only the faint sound of a prayer bell, echoing softly through the mountains. I stood there for a long time, the cold air brushing against my face, the scent of incense drifting from somewhere unseen. And as I took my first step down toward the hidden valley, the whisper returned, faint, loving, eternal. The path wound downward like a ribbon of stone, disappearing and reappearing through the thick, silver mist. Each step echoed softly, as though the mountain itself was listening. I walked slowly, my boots crunching on gravel, my breath mingling with the cold air. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became, until the only sound left was the rhythm of my heartbeat. And then, through the fog, I began to see colors. At first, they looked like faded shadows, pale lines of red, green, and yellow swaying in the wind. But as I drew closer, I realized they were prayer flags, hundreds of them, tied between trees, rocks, and wooden poles, stretching across the valley like threads of light. They fluttered gently, their edges torn by time, their mantras still visible, ancient Tibetan prayers for peace, compassion, and eternal life. The air around them was alive. Every time a flag moved, I could hear a faint whisper, not words, but energy, as if every breath of wind carried the world's quietest prayers into the sky. I reached out and touched one. The fabric was cold and thin, yet it pulsed faintly under my fingertips, like it remembered every hand that had tied it there. For a moment, I closed my eyes and listened. The mountain breathed, the mist moved, and deep inside, I felt something awaken, a stillness, a peace I hadn't felt in years. As I continued down, the valley began to reveal itself. Tiny wooden houses with red roofs appeared through the mist, their chimneys releasing slow curls of smoke. The scent of burning cedar drifted upward, soft, clean, sacred. I could hear faint bells in the distance, their rhythm gentle and hypnotic. It didn't feel like sound, but more like breathing. Each tone echoed against the cliffs, and I realized the bells weren't random. They were in harmony with the wind itself. For every gust of air, a bell would chime, and for every chime, a flag would flutter. The whole valley was alive, a single living prayer. As I stepped into the village, I felt an overwhelming calm wash over me. Children played quietly by the riverbank, their laughter soft and echoing like ripples in water. An old woman was spinning a prayer wheel outside her home. She looked up, smiled faintly, and said something in Tibetan I didn't understand. But her eyes, deep, kind, timeless, seemed to recognize me. She gestured toward the center of the village, where a tall pole stood surrounded by countless flags. The pole was carved with symbols of dragons and clouds, its base covered with small stones arranged in perfect circles. I walked closer. The ground felt warm beneath my feet. The mist moved around me like a veil, and suddenly, the sound of the wind grew louder, a soft, endless whisper that filled the air with meaning I couldn't explain. It was as if the entire valley was breathing with me, as though I had become part of its rhythm. And then I heard again, that same voice from my dreams, gentle, familiar, filled with warmth. You have found what was never lost. I froze. The voice didn't come from outside. It came from within. For a brief, impossible moment, I remembered standing here before, not as a traveler, but as someone who had once belonged. The wind carried my breath away, and I whispered into the mist, "I'm home." The valley responded with silence, the kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of everything the heart can't say. As evening descended, the mist began to glow faintly from the setting sun. Golden light danced on the flags, making them shimmer like streams of color in the air. The villagers lit lamps near their doors, small flames flickering softly against the twilight. One by one, bells began to ring again, slow, deliberate, as if calling the night to rest. I sat near the prayer pole, watching the flags move above me, feeling the mountain breathe around me. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel like I was searching anymore. The evening mist had thinned into a gentle silver veil. The village looked peaceful, almost dreamlike. Tiny houses glowing with oil lamps, streams whispering through narrow stone paths, and prayer flags fluttering softly under a violet sky. I walked aimlessly, my hands warm from the tea an old woman had given me. It tasted faintly of herbs and honey, sweet and ancient. Everything around me felt right. The air, the silence, the light, as though every part of this place was carefully designed to slow down the heart and hush the noise of the world. But beneath that peace, something stirred, something I couldn't name. As I wandered deeper into the village, I noticed how every house faced the same direction, toward the mountains. Each doorway had a small offering placed beside it, flowers, salt, a bowl of milk, and a lit candle. It wasn't for decoration. It felt like a ritual, a silent promise between the people and the mountain itself. At the far end of the path, a tall wooden gate stood half open. Beyond it, I could see faint movement, shadows gliding in the fog. Curious, I stepped closer. The air grew colder. The hum of the bells faded, replaced by a deep, replaced by a deep, steady vibration, like the heartbeat of the earth. And then I saw them, a group of monks standing in a circle, their robes dark red, their heads bowed. Each held a small, glowing lantern. The light wasn't yellow like a flame. It was white, pure, and soft, almost alive. They moved slowly, chanting under their breath. The sound was so low, I could feel it more than hear it. The vibration entered my chest, making my heart beat in rhythm with theirs. I hid behind a tree, afraid of disturbing them. But one of the monks suddenly looked up. Even from a distance, I could feel his gaze. Calm, knowing, ancient. He raised his hand slightly, as if inviting me forward. I hesitated, but something inside me, the same feeling that brought me here, told me to go. As I approached, the chanting stopped. The circle of monks parted, and at the center, I saw a small stone altar. On it rested an old, cracked bowl filled with water. But the water wasn't still. It shimmered like liquid glass. And when I looked into it, I didn't see my reflection. I saw a sky full of stars, moving like waves in slow motion. And then, a glimpse of a face, a young boy, standing on the same bridge I had crossed that morning. His eyes were calm, his hands folded, his lips moving as if whispering a prayer. The image flickered, and the water rippled violently. The monk beside me touched my shoulder gently. "The mountain remembers all who come," he said, "but only those who listen can see." Before I could ask what that meant, the water stilled again. The boy's image was gone, but in its place, a reflection of me appeared, with a faint light glowing on my forehead. It looked like a small symbol, a circle within a circle, pulsing with each heartbeat. When I looked up, the monks had lowered their heads again. The one who had spoken turned away slowly, his voice barely audible in the wind. "Welcome to the place between dreams," he said. "Now, the mountain will show you what you've forgotten." The air grew warmer for a moment, then cold again. The mist swirled around me, and I suddenly felt weightless, as if my body wasn't standing on earth anymore, but floating in memory. The lanterns flickered, and I saw flashes, images not from now, but from another time. A temple carved into ice, a river glowing under moonlight, the sound of laughter, mine. Then everything went dark. For a brief heartbeat, the mountain was silent, and when the world returned, I was standing alone. The monks were gone, the altar was gone. Only the sound of the wind remained, carrying faint echoes of their chant, and the scent of burning cedar drifting through the night. I walked back toward the village in silence, feeling both calm and lost. The houses were quiet now, their lamps glowing dimly like sleepy eyes. And above me, the prayer flags fluttered once more, softly whispering into the endless sky. Somewhere in that whisper, I thought I heard the boy's voice. A single word, barely a breath. Dawn came softly. The first rays of light spilled over the mountains, painting the mist in shades of gold and silver. I woke to the sound of bells, slow, rhythmic, endless. The air was cold but clean, filled with the scent of burning cedar and butter lamps. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The memory of the chanting monks lingered like a dream. The circle, the water, the boy's reflection, it all felt unreal, yet I could still feel the faint pulse of that strange light. On my forehead, when I touched my skin, nothing was there, just warmth. A warmth that didn't fade. The village was already awake. Women were sweeping their courtyards. Children carried buckets of water from a stream, and men walked slowly toward the temple at the center of the valley. It was built from dark stone, its roof curved like the wings of a resting bird. Prayer flags hung from its highest point, stretching across the sky like rivers of color. I felt drawn to it, like gravity but gentler, deeper. As I entered, the world outside disappeared into silence. Only the sound of the bells remained, and the quiet hum of something ancient, alive, listening. Inside, the air was cool and still. Candles flickered softly against the stone walls, their light catching on hundreds of tiny carvings. Faces, symbols, and prayers etched into every surface. At the far end of the hall, an old monk sat cross-legged on a stone seat. His head was bowed slightly, his hands resting on his knees. When I stepped closer, I realized his eyes were closed, not in meditation, but sealed by time itself. He was blind, and yet somehow, I knew he had seen more than anyone ever could. Without raising his head, he spoke. "I have been waiting for you." His voice was calm and deep, like the echo of a temple bell at dusk. I froze. "How do you know me?" I asked quietly. He smiled faintly. "No one truly knows you," he said. "Not even yourself. But the mountain remembers all its children." His words wrapped around me like mist. I wanted to speak, to ask about the dream, the monks, the glowing water. But the moment I opened my mouth, he lifted a hand. "Do not ask," he said gently. "Not yet. Let the silence speak first." He motioned for me to sit. As I did, the air seemed to shift, heavier but peaceful. "Every soul that comes here," he began, "comes carrying a question. But this place does not give answers. It gives remembrance." "Remembrance of what?" I whispered. He turned his face slightly toward me, his unseeing eyes glowing faintly in the candlelight. "Of who you were," he said, "before you forgot." His words struck something deep within me, a place beyond thought, beyond memory. For a second, I felt dizzy. Images flashed behind my eyes. A mountain temple, the sound of laughter, and that same boy from the water bowl, standing beside me, smiling. When I gasped, the monk nodded slowly. "You have seen him," he said, "the child in the reflection." "Yes," I said quietly. "Who is he?" The monk smiled again. "He is you." Silence. Only the sound of the prayer bells in the distance. I tried to understand, but the thought felt impossible. The boy me? How? The monk placed his hand on the ground. "The village," he said softly, "exists between what was and what will be. Those who come here are not lost. They are returning." He tilted his head slightly, as if listening to something only he could hear. "Your soul once lived here," he whispered, "long before your name, your body, your world. When the wind spoke your first prayer." I felt my chest tighten. Tears burned behind my eyes, though I didn't know why. The words didn't make sense, and yet they felt like the truth I had been waiting for all my life. The monk reached into a small wooden box beside him and pulled out a smooth stone pendant. It was round, engraved with the same circle within a circle symbol that had glowed on my forehead in the reflection. He held it out to me. "Take this," he said. "It belongs to you." When my fingers touched it, the stone grew warm, alive. A faint vibration moved through my hand, into my chest, and for a moment, I could hear faint whispers, hundreds of voices chanting in unison, each one saying my name in a language I didn't know. The monk spoke again, softly. "The mountain does not call everyone, only those who are ready to remember." He smiled. "And you, my child, have begun to remember." When I looked down again, the pendant was still glowing faintly, its warmth pulsing with my heartbeat. The monk lowered his head once more. "Go now," he said. "The wind will guide you to the next truth. But do not fear what you see. The mountain always shows both the light and the shadow." I stepped outside. The air was sharp, filled with sunlight breaking through the mist. The sound of bells returned, mingling with the song of the wind. As I walked back through the village, The pendant against my chest felt alive, like a heart that wasn't mine, beating softly with every step. And from somewhere high in the cliffs above, a voice, the same one from my dreams, whispered again. The sun was high, but the light in the valley was soft, muted, as if the mountains themselves were holding a secret they didn't want to share too quickly. The pendant around my neck was still warm, a steady, living pulse that seemed to beat in rhythm with my heart. Each throb carried a faint whisper, like the mountain breathing through me. I walked past the small homes of the village, where prayer flags fluttered in the wind, their colors dancing like living prayers. An old woman bowed as I passed. Her eyes were bright, and though she said nothing, her smile told me she already knew who I was becoming. At the edge of the village, a narrow trail began, a path of smooth stones leading upward toward the high cliffs. The monk's words echoed in my mind. The wind will guide you to the next truth. So I followed the sound of the wind. At first, it was gentle, like a song sung from far away. But as I climbed, it grew stronger, circling around me, pulling at my clothes, whispering words I couldn't quite understand. And then, as suddenly as it had risen, it stopped completely. The world fell silent. Even the rustling grass went still. No birds, no wind, no sound at all. For a moment, I thought I had gone deaf. The silence was so deep, so absolute, that it felt like stepping out of time itself. I could hear only one thing: my heartbeat, slow, steady, and somehow louder than it had ever been. And with each beat, I began to feel lighter, as if my body was slowly dissolving into the air. The stones under my feet no longer felt solid. The world was fading, not disappearing, but blending, as though everything, even me, was part of one vast, breathing stillness. In that silence, a sound began to form, not with my ears, but inside my mind. It was the same chant the monks had sung that first night. But now I understood it. It wasn't made of words, but of meaning. It said, when the noise of the world fades, the mountain begins to speak. And the mountain did speak, not in thunder, not in language, but in a single silent truth that filled the space between every breath. You are not apart. You are a part. I fell to my knees. The air shimmered around me, and the ground seemed to hum softly, a vibration that moved through my hands, my arms, my chest. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't alone. The boy was there again, the same boy from the reflection, barefoot calm, his eyes clear as the sky after rain. He didn't speak. He simply sat beside me, his hand resting on the ground, feeling the same pulse of the mountain. I whispered, "Who are you really?" He smiled gently. "I'm the echo you left behind," he said. "The sound you made when you forgot who you were." We sat together in silence. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time had no meaning here. In that stillness, the world became vast. I could feel the life in every direction. The frozen rivers beneath the cliffs, the sleeping seeds in the valley's soil, the heartbeat of every living thing, woven into one continuous, endless rhythm. It was beautiful. It was infinite. It was home. Then, slowly the wind returned, a soft breath moving through the valley, as if the mountain itself had sighed. The sound of bells carried through the air again, and with it came warmth, the warmth of sunlight touching my face. When I looked beside me, the boy was gone, but where he had sat, a small white feather remained, spinning gently in the air. Before settling into my open palm, I stood, holding the feather against my heart. The silence had not truly vanished. It had simply moved inside me. Now, when I listened closely, I could hear it beneath, every sound. Beneath the bells, the wind, even my breath. The silence was always there. Not emptiness, but peace. As I began walking back down the path, the pendant at my neck pulsed once more, brighter this time, as if it had absorbed the silence and turned it into light. From far below, I could see the temple again, its golden roof gleaming in the sun. And for the first time, I understood. The journey wasn't about finding the village. It was about remembering the silence I had carried all along. Night fell quietly over the valley. The air was cool, and the stars shone like scattered salt across a dark velvet sky. The pendant around my neck had stopped glowing, but its warmth lingered, steady, alive, comforting. I lay in the small wooden room where the monks had given me rest. Outside, prayer flags fluttered softly in the breeze, and from far away came the faint sound of a flowing river. It wasn't the sound of any river I had ever heard before. It was slower, softer, a rhythm that pulsed like a heartbeat, a song sung by the earth itself. As my eyes closed, the sound grew stronger. The walls dissolved, the air became water, and the world shifted. I was dreaming, but it didn't feel like a dream. It felt realer than waking. I was standing beside a great river, its surface glowing faintly beneath a silver moon. The water moved gently, curling and unfolding like silk in the wind. Across the river, I could see figures, soft outlines, transparent as mist. They were lighting lamps, hundreds of them, and setting them afloat on the water. Each lamp carried a tiny flame, and each flame reflected perfectly on the surface, so that the entire river looked like a sky full of stars. Flowing through the earth, a voice beside me spoke, soft, ancient, familiar. It is the river of remembering. I turned. It was the blind monk, but here his eyes were open, clear and bright like polished glass. You have crossed in the memory of water, he said. Every soul that has lived carries a river within, and in that river, all that has been forgotten still flows. He pointed to the water. Look, I stepped closer to the edge, and the river began to shimmer. Scenes rose from its surface, not reflections, but memories. I saw a small monastery, high in the mountains, its walls carved with prayers. Inside, a young monk, me, kneeling before the same stone circle I had seen in the village. His eyes were full of peace. His hands rested over the same pendant that now hung around my neck, and beside him stood the blind monk. Only this time he was not old. He was young, strong, his face lit with compassion. I realized then he had been my teacher, and I his student. The dream shimmered, and the scene shifted again. Now, the monastery was burning. Smoke curled through the cold air, the sound of bells clashing with a roar of wind. I saw myself, the younger me, carrying a small wooden box through the fire. Inside the box was the pendant. I ran through the falling ash, toward the edge of a cliff overlooking the same glowing river. The monk, my teacher, called out to me, his voice echoing through the smoke. "Protect the light," he shouted, "even if you forget." And then, a flash of white, a fall, a rush of wind, darkness. I gasped and stumbled backward from the river's edge. My heart was racing. The monk, the older one, was still standing beside me, calm as still water. "You see now," he said quietly. The mountain did not summon a stranger. It called one of its own back home. I felt tears on my face. But why did I forget? He smiled faintly. Because sometimes forgetting is part of the remembering. The light must travel through darkness to find itself again. He stepped closer, placing his hand over my pendant. "Every drop of this river," he said, "is a memory learning how to forgive itself." The water began to rise. slowly, gently, surrounding us in soft silver light. The lamps floated higher, lifting off the river and into the air, drifting upward like glowing souls returning to the stars. As they rose, the monk's voice faded into the sound of flowing water. When you wake, the river will be gone, but its song will stay within you. Follow it, and you will find the next gate. The light grew brighter, so bright that the river became pure white. And when I opened my eyes, I was back in my bed in the village. Morning sunlight spilled through the window. Outside, the river still flowed, quiet, gentle, but now when I listened, I could hear its hidden music beneath the sound. The song of remembering, the song of home. The morning light poured softly through the window, turning the air golden. I could still hear the faint whisper of the river, like a memory that refused to fade. When I rose from bed, the pendant around my neck glowed faintly once more. It pulsed 3 times, slow, steady, and alive. Outside, the village was quiet. Even the prayer flags seemed to move slower today, their colors brushing the sky in rhythm with the wind. But there was something different in the air, a kind of calling, a whisper that came from high above the valley, where clouds gathered around the peaks like white veils. The mountain was calling again. I followed the narrow path that wound out of the village and into the cliffs. Every step felt guided, not by sight, but by instinct. The air grew thinner as I climbed, and with every breath, the world seemed to grow more distant, the valley below shrinking into a dream. After hours of walking, I reached a place where the path ended, a flat ledge of stone overlooking endless sky. There was nothing ahead, only wind. The wind here was alive. It moved like a creature, not wild, not angry, but powerful and watchful. When it touched my skin, it carried voices, soft, layered, ancient. Some laughed, some whispered, some simply breathed. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I could hear the words forming clearly within the storm. Welcome home, child of air. The pendant grew warm again, and I felt the same hum I had felt in the temple. Deep beneath my ribs, I opened my eyes and saw something shimmering in the air ahead of me. A doorway. It wasn't a door made of wood or stone. It was pure wind, spinning gently in a circle. The air shimmered like glass, and faint lights moved within it, like fireflies trapped in a storm. At its center was silence. Deep, endless silence, the gate of wind. I took a step forward, and the pendant began to vibrate. The closer I came, the stronger the sound, a low, singing tone that filled my chest and skull, until it became part of my heartbeat. Then, from within the gate, a figure appeared, a shape formed entirely of moving air. It had no face, no eyes, no clear form. But when it spoke, its voice was both male and female, both young and old. You have remembered the water, it said. Now remember the air. I stood in silence, my breath shallow. What does that mean? I asked softly. The river taught you memory, it said. The wind teaches you freedom. You cannot climb the next path while holding the weight of your past. I lower my gaze. I've already lost everything, I said. There's nothing left to let go of. The figure moved closer. Even sorrow can become a chain, it whispered. Even truth can become a cage. Its hand, made of air, touched the pendant over my heart. Instantly, my body became light, weightless, floating, and then the world broke apart. The mountain, the sky, the stone, all dissolved into pure white wind. I was flying, but not like before. This was different. There was no up, no down, no direction at all. Only motion, endless and free. Below me, the valley unfolded like a dream. The river glowed. The temple shone like gold dust in the sun. and the entire village looked like a single heartbeat, moving beneath the mountain's skin. For the first time, I saw it clearly. The mountain wasn't a place. It was alive. It was the soul of everything, and I was part of it. The voice of the wind returned, softer this time, almost like a lullaby. Every breath you take is the mountain breathing through you. Every heartbeat is the echo of the river. You were never outside this world. You were always its dream. I wanted to cry, but instead, I simply breathed, slow, deep, peaceful. And as I did, the wind began to slow. The light dimmed. The mountain reappeared beneath me. I landed gently on the stone ledge. My feet bare, my eyes wet, my heart quiet. The shimmering doorway faded, but a trail of light remained, leading upward toward a narrow ridge at the very top of the mountain. That was where the next truth waited, the final truth. The pennant glowed once more, brighter than ever before, its warmth filling me with calm, courage, and the faint echo of a promise long forgotten. The air grew thinner as I climbed higher. The path was narrow now, barely a trail, only stone mist, and the steady sound of my own breathing. The pendant against my chest was warm again, but softer this time, a pulse that rose and fell with every breath. The wind was quieter here, as though it had said all it needed to say. Above me, the sky was pale and endless, streaked with ribbons of light that didn't seem to belong to any hour of day or night. The mountain had changed. It felt less like stone and more like thought, like I was walking inside a dream that had been waiting for me for centuries. As I reached a high ridge, the world fell still. No birds, no biz, only silence. And then a whisper, soft, distant, almost too faint to hear. At first, I thought it was the wind again, but when I stopped, I realized it wasn't coming from outside. It was inside my mind, inside my heart. A voice, gentle, trembling, spoke my name. Do you remember me? I froze. The voice was familiar, a sound from another life. Well, I couldn't quite place. The air shimmered before me, and slowly, a faint shape appeared, the outline of a woman, her hair long, her face glowing softly like candlelight through fog. Tears filled my eyes before I even understood why. You were lost, she said softly, but I waited. My throat tightened. Who are you? Her smile was sorrow and kindness all at once. I was the prayer you left unfinished, she said, the one you promised to whisper again. I wanted to move closer, but she faded as I reached for her, her voice echoing in the air around me. Forgive yourself. The words lingered, carrying warmth and ache all at once. And then, as her form vanished, another whisper began, a different voice, lower, older. It was the voice of my teacher, the blind monk, younger, stronger, clearer than before. You ran toward the fire, he said. You carried the light when no one else could. Do you see now? You were never meant to save the temple. You were meant to save the memory. The mountain air shimmered again. This time, a child's laughter echoed faintly, soft, distant, like bells ringing from underwater. A small boy appeared near the edge of the cliff, barefoot, smiling, his eyes the same calm blue as the river. You came back, he said. His voice was full of wonder. I knew you would. I felt my knees weaken. Oh, you're the boy from the reflection. He nodded. But I'm also the part of you that never left. The one who always remembered how to listen. I couldn't speak. The air around him glowed softly, and I felt something stir deep within me. A memory, so old it no longer had words. He reached out his hand. Well, I took it. I saw flashes. Faces, moments, lives. 1,000 people I had known. 1,000 goodbyes. 1,000 promises whispered into the wind. Mothers, friends, strangers I had once loved without knowing why. all of them speaking together, their voices blending like waves meeting the shore. We never left you. We became the wind that carried you here. The mountain around me seemed to breathe, stones glowing softly beneath my feet, the air pulsing with light. Every sound, every whisper was now one great harmony, a chorus of souls, singing not of loss, but of return. The pendant on my chest grew brighter, the warmth spreading through my whole body, until I could feel every heartbeat I had ever had. Through all the lives I'd lived, the voices grew softer, melting into the sound of the mountain breeze. Do not grieve the past, they said together. It was never gone. It was always waiting within you. I closed my eyes, letting the last of the whispers fade into the wind. And in their place, there was peace, pure, silent, infinite, the kind of peace that doesn't end when you wake. When I opened my eyes again, the mountain sky was clear. The clouds had parted, and high above me, I could see the summit, bathed in golden light, calling me onward. The path to the summit twisted upward, thin as a line of smoke. Each step felt lighter now, not because the climb was easy, but because something heavy within me had lifted. The voices from the past still echoed softly in my chest, not as sorrow, but as warmth. They had become part of my breath. Above me, clouds swirled in slow spirals, and the light shifted in colors too soft to name. White, silver, a hint of gold. The mountain air shimmered, and from deep within the mist, I began to hear it, a sound like no other, a low, constant hum, as if the sky itself were chanting. I followed the sound. It grew stronger as I climbed, rising and falling with the wind. 1,000 invisible voices whispering in harmony. They were not words. They were pure tone, pure presence. And then, through the clouds, I saw it, a temple, but not made of stone or wood or time. It was carved entirely from air. Its walls shimmered like heat above sand, shifting in shape with every breeze. When the wind moved, so did the temple, flowing, breathing, singing. It was alive. I stepped closer, and the air around me changed. It vibrated softly, a rhythm that matched the beating of my heart. As I passed through the invisible doorway, the world outside disappeared into quiet. Inside, the temple was vast, a hall of moving air and light. Beams of sun slipped through the currents, creating rivers of gold that danced above me. And the sound was everywhere. It filled the space, the air, my lungs, my bones. It wasn't something I was hearing. It was something I was becoming. In the center of the temple, a single figure sat cross-legged, its body formed entirely from wind and light. When I approached, the air around it rippled, and a voice, deep and endless, filled the space. You have remembered the silence, it said. You have heard the voices of the past. Now, hear the voice of the world itself. I knelt. The pendant around my neck glowed bright, and for a moment, the hum of the temple shifted, changing pitch, as though it were singing with me. Every mountain breathes, the voice said. Every storm prays. The world itself chants, a hymn too vast for most to hear. The air grew warmer, and I could feel it moving through me, through my hands, my chest, my breath. I realized then, this temple was not a place I had found. It was something that had always existed within me. The Temple of Wind was the breath of life itself. The voice continued, softly, endlessly, do not mistake stillness for silence, or wind for emptiness. They're the same prayer, spoken in two languages. Around me, the air shimmered with shapes, faces, forms, and memories, each one made of light and sound. The monks, the woman from the ridge, the child by the river, all of them singing without words. clouds. The wind carried their song through me, until I could no longer tell where the world ended and where I began. Then the air gathered, spinning upward in a soft spiral. From its center, a small orb of light emerged, clear, bright, and singing softly like a bell. The figure of wind spoke again. "This is the heart of the mountain, the sound that keeps the world breathing." I reached out, and the light settled in my palm, warm, pulsing gently, just like the pendant on my chest. For a moment, both lights, the pendant and the orb, beat in perfect harmony. Then they merged and became one. The chanting wind slowed. The temple's walls began to fade, the air returning to stillness. But the sound remained, inside me now, woven into every breath I took. The figure's voice whispered one last time, almost like a sigh. "When the final gate opens, you will not need to listen anymore. You will become the sound." As I stepped out of the temple, the sky above the summit opened wide. The wind carried golden dust across the horizon, and in the distance, I saw what waited at the mountain's peak, a circle of light glowing against the clouds, the final gate, and beyond it, something vast, something eternal.